Ones across the street where it's on the outside and it creates that prison feel. Before we talk about the plaza here a little bit, as we were walking, I thought about a story that an elderly fellow in Redwood City told me when I first started working there. He ran the audio video at the city council as a volunteer. Neat old guy. And we were talking and we really hit it off. And he told me in the 1920s, I guess it was, as a young boy, 8-9 years old, he was hired by the Chamber of Commerce to go to every storefront on the main street, and he had this special tool that got in there and it hit lights in the storefront display windows. So the idea was, hey, even the businesses that are closed, we still want them to be lit up. We want it to feel inviting. So it's the polar opposite of this close it off prison effect. And so that was his job. He was paid by the Chamber of Commerce to go. And he told me one of the businesses that still had the little switch that he was able to hit with that tool, and it's still there to this day, from the 1920s. I'm sure I wouldn't be surprised to hear Fresno's Chamber of Commerce had something similar going on here at Fulton. So, you know, how our mindset switched, you know, from, hey, look, even if we're closed, we want this whole area to be lit up and people to feel comfortable, to, nope, we're shutting it down, it's a prison. And, you know, what does that do to the way that people feel about an area, you know? And so that struck, as we were walking, I remembered that story. I thought I'd share that with you.
Perfect.
You want to?
This is another catalytic project.
Yeah, so what we're sitting on here is Mariposa Plaza, as it's known, former site of the Grand Central Hotel, which was a really amazing building in the early days of Fresno. If you look at the classic shots of Mariposa from the train station with the courthouse terminating the vista, this was one of the buildings on the right that had the big 2-story gallery, you know, over the sidewalk. It was a really cool thing. It got torn down in the 60s, and it was turned into Mariposa Plaza. And so what we're hoping to do, Mariposa Plaza is not part of the Fulton Street conversion project. It's a separate project that we hope will follow on the heels of Fulton. We have a couple of grants to redesign this area and really make it great. And we want to, you know, make it a more active part. We'd like to see the buildings address it a little bit better over time. And we'd like to shift the stage potentially down to that direction so that it chops up the space a little less, makes ice skating or other things easier to do, and it really makes it a great, you know, music venue and things like that. The last town I worked in, we had a plaza right, you know, on our main drag in the central block, and you know, they had free concerts every Friday during the summer, and 3,000 people would come out and hang out. It's about the size of this plaza, so, you know, reconfigured and programmed, this could be a real gem. And so we're still working on that design, and we hope to keep it moving, but hopefully in the next couple of years this part will transform too and be a more, you know, active, vibrant place. And the legend is that by one of these trees is the original spring that attracted Leland Stanford to locate Fresno here. He wanted to be by Easterby's wheat fields, but he picked this exact spot because of that spring and supposedly the ash trees that were growing there, hence our name, Fresno, ash tree in Spanish. And apparently when they were demolishing the Grand Central Hotel, they uncovered that spring in the basement when they were demolishing out the basement. That's what the plaque says, that's how the legend goes. I don't know how much of that is tall tales and how much of it is you know, true to our founding, but this is the birthplace of Fresno. This is, you know, really with the heart of the heart for a long, long time, and it kind of became an isolated area, a little bit of a backwater, but we want to bring it right back into the center of things. And you couldn't ask for a better backdrop, could you? I mean, it's unbelievable. I never get tired of this view, you know, even though I've lived here for 3/4 of my life. And, you know, that's, you can't ask for a better backdrop. So this hopefully will be one of the great urban piazzas moving forward as we reconfigure it and improve it.
High-speed rail, how does it affect the plans?
Yeah, so one of the, you know, the plan, there was a lot of work done with these plans from 2010 to 2012. Emphasis shifted to general plan, Fulton, and other things, and now it's shifted back. And one of the things that's happened in the intervening 3 or 4 years is that the high-speed rail station area has been locked in. There was originally thought that it would be elevated, that it would be oriented around Inyo, and we got the location where it should be at Mariposa, right in the heart of the heart. It's been figured out since then. It's going to be at grade, and so now that all that's locked in, we've contracted with a planning and engineering firm called AECOM, and they've been working with us on a station area master plan. That work is done and has been built into the Fulton Corridor specific plan. So rather than being adopted as a separate document, we built it into our Fulton area plan. And so we're working really hard to make sure that that high-speed train station really feeds people into this area. That's another thing that we don't want to be a self-contained biosphere where people never leave it. We want to, yeah, it's a beautiful train station, but it's not a big shopping mall also. We want to draw people down Mariposa and out Fulton from that train station. And so we're really designing things to work that way, working with the state to make sure it works out that way. We've also got around the train station a big intermodal transit center plan so that, okay, every fax bus route leads to that spot. The bus rapid transit goes to that spot. Yards, if it's still working, goes to that spot. Greyhound. So when you take high-speed rail into town, then if you need to get to other parts of the city or the region, you've got those connections. And if this is your destination, all those pedestrian connections to this area are really improved. So Mariposa just beckons for you to come down. You're dying to get to Fulton, and it's only 2 blocks away, and it's a really comfortable 2 blocks. And so that's our goal. And then some of the catalytic development projects that were identified also are on this land between here and the train station. And so we really want to see, hotel, entertainment, retail, housing, office space filling in these parking lots, a lot of which thankfully are publicly controlled. And we want to see a lot of development here so that you don't have a dead spot between the heart of the city here and that train station. And so that's another set of catalytic projects that we're working on, and a lot of our streetscape improvements are being focused on this area to really make the connections great. Also, what we're trying to do is reestablish parts of the street grid that were lost. So, when Fulton Mall came in, it wasn't just about pedestrianizing the main street. They took out a lot of our original 1872 street grid that made Fresno a walkable place. So yeah, you had one street without cars, but all of a sudden, all the connections that tied this area all together were ripped up, and the whole super block concept came into play. So we're trying to reestablish Broadway, reestablish Merced Street all the way to H Street, and tie in all these lost pieces of our old grid that made it work. Hotel Fresno is now buried in a parking lot. It's hard to even get to it. How do you even get to the darn thing? It used to be at the corner of Broadway and Merced, which was a busy intersection. It was an important place that was easy to get to. And so we want to reestablish that too. And that's one of the things we're trying to do. So when you're here, it's easy to get to the Hotel Fresno. When you're at the high-speed rail station, it's easy to get here, and everything's tied together. And we can distribute the parking and have direct links to where people want to go from the parking, and it's all done on foot, and it enlivens all those streets. So those are things we're trying to get back to. It's not just about making Fulton reopen and great, but also reestablishing that historic grid pattern that made us walkable, made us vibrant, made all corners of downtown accessible and economically viable.
You were talking about the intermodal transit hub that you guys have plans for it. Is that going to relocate the fax hub?
How we do that is still being worked out. Luckily, we have about 10 years to figure it out. Right now, it makes no sense to put BRT out there. This is where it needs to go, so that's where it's going to go. Ultimately, The way we link BRT to high-speed rail may be a shuttle, maybe by adding another stop. Yeah, we stop there and then we loop around and stop there. We haven't, or it could potentially move all the way over, and this is just for the next 10 years, and then we move it. We're not quite sure about how we're going to do that, but we do know there needs to be a strong link, and so the space is reserved for where the BRT would go, but how it affects this, we're still fleshing that out.
I work for EOC. We have a lot of clients that use public transit. It would be great to have it just on.
Absolutely, and this will be the most plugged in part of the city as far as transit goes. Once that's all done, it'll be great. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, what about signage? Is there going to be requirement for uniformity or at least quality?
Well, yeah. So we're not going for a uniformity of design. We'll say where everybody is wood with gold lettering. Some cities in Europe do that, like out in Rothenburg in Germany, they all have the same type of signage. Even McDonald's has to conform. We're not going there, but we are trying to get a uniform level of quality and get that quality up. So we're trying to get away from, no disrespect to Payless Shoe Source, it's great to have a shoe store, but the plastic-faced, internally illuminated can signs, we call them, we're trying to get away from that. And do instead, if you're going to have signs with individual letters like that are lit up, do halo lighting where it comes from behind, or exposed neon inside, the way that are a little bit more exciting and interesting and that weather better. Those acrylic lenses tend not to weather very well, and over time they look dingy, whereas other things tend to last a lot longer. We also want to encourage a lot more pedestrian-oriented signage that projects over the sidewalk. So you see the blade signs, they call them, that are mounted to like a rod that comes out, then the sign dangles over the sidewalk. We want to start getting more of those, get away from the internally illuminated and go toward like the gooseneck lighting where it's above and shines onto the face of the sign, stuff that weathers better and just looks a lot more appealing. But we want this to have a lot of signage. We just want to get the quality up, and we want there to be a lot of variety as long as it's diversely good. So, but as our business heart, there's always been a lot of signage down here, and we definitely don't want to tamp down on signage so much as just really up the quality and make it more effective.
So I would say it's a good question because it really is the example of what we have required is the exact opposite of what good cities do. So this is a box sign here, not the one on top, the Every Woman is Unique sign. We would call a box sign where it's illuminated behind plastic. That is illegal in almost every city you like to visit on vacation. And that's what we require. A blade sign that sticks out that has a really cool dress store look to it that attracts your attention, and as a pedestrian walking by you'd see because it's perpendicular to the storefront, that's illegal. So the sign really, the new development code puts us in line with what other great downtowns are doing, and our current code puts us in exact opposite of what good cities are doing. So again, it's a true 180-degree flip in terms of requiring the right thing, and currently we're requiring the wrong thing. So another big question, Dan, from this vantage point, height limit. I've heard controversy on social media about why do we have a height limit?
Right. So what we're looking at for downtown is a 3-tiered height limit system. So this would be our downtown core zone, and this would have the biggest height limits, and we would allow up to 15 stories, so about the height of Security Bank or Pacific Southwest.
So if someone knocks this Payless Shoe Store down,
they could go up just about as high as that, 190 feet. So this would be, our biggest heights. And then out by the convention center, City Hall, where you have a lot of civic buildings, that would be the next level. That would be a 10-story zone. Ventura Street and Warehouse Road, that area. And then the surrounding more neighborhood urban areas such as Mural District, Chinatown, South Stadium, those would be a 6-story zone. Now, some folks had said, hey, wouldn't it be great? You know, we're a big city, we should have a bigger skyline. Why do we have to have a height limit at all? Things like that. And there are a couple, first of all, I agree. We should have a big sort. We're bigger. A lot of people don't realize how big we are. We're bigger than Pittsburgh, Cleveland, New Orleans, Miami, Atlanta, Oakland, Sacramento, Minneapolis, Salt Lake City. We should have a serious skyline. We're a serious city. However, the reality of things is that right now, rents coming in tend not to support steel construction that you need to get up to that height. You need, you know, $3 a foot rent to support that. We're at about $1.25 right now. So whether we allow it or not, it's not really going to happen. But what tends to happen when you erase height limits is a lot of landowners either hold on to their land and won't sell it because they think it's worth more than it is, and it makes it tough for projects to get out of the ground, or speculators come and drive the land values way up above what our economy can really support, and it takes a while for that to all simmer down, and we don't want to go through that. But more importantly is that we have a lot of emptiness in downtown Fresno right now. 600 acres. It's a massive area. It's in its geographic footprint, it's as big as, you know, some of the biggest cities in America. You know, downtown Fresno encompasses all of lower Manhattan, Greenwich Village, Little Italy, all the way down to Battery Park, the Lower East Side, all of it. It would fit into downtown Fresno, that's a massive, you know, area. People don't realize how big it is, and much of it is either occupied by little 1 or 2 story buildings or surface parking lots or vacant lots. We have a lot of space to fill in. So even though I want a big soaring skyline that is worthy of our size, if we got a couple of mega towers that sucked up all the development potential, then that deprives all these far-flung parts of downtown that need revitalization of that activity. So the reality is, with our economics and with the emptiness that we have to fill in, we're better off if for the first 5 or 10 years we have a bunch of mid-rise buildings scattered throughout the area, enlivening all of it. And then when that happens, then I think it's really time to lift those limits and really start going vertical. But if we go vertical too quick, then we're depriving the far-flung areas of downtown, Mural District, out by, you know, Warehouse Row, South Stadium. They're not gonna get the vibrancy that they need. Not to mention Chinatown, which really needs, you know, development too. So if our first phase is a little bit more modest, that cues us off for phase 2 to be really dramatic, and the whole thing will end up being more successful. And so that's the strategy behind it. We don't want to be a sleepy little low-rise town. We want to be up there with our peers in terms of the postcard skyline, you know, visuals. But that's phase 2. We really need to fill in the emptiness first in order to get downtown where it needs to be.
So then the other side is, if they tear down Payless Shoes, can they build another 1-story building?
No, this area has a minimum height limit of 5 stories. So the core of Fulton and the high-speed train station, we've put in a minimum height limit of 5 stories because this is our most prime land. And on the flip side of buildings, you know, maybe being too tall and sucking up demand from other areas, the flip side is being too small and wasting prime sites. And now, hey, I've just spent a couple $1 million, I'm not going to tear that down for 30 years at least, and we don't get what we need. So we've tried to balance that. So in most of downtown, we've decided in the final version of the plan not to have a minimum height limit everywhere, and allow more humble buildings to fill in those empty spaces and get some activity going. But here in the heart of the heart, we want that 5-story minimum. We only have a handful of these really special sites. We can't waste them. So that's the flip side of that. So from basically, you know, Fresno to Tulare, Van Ness to the train station, that's where we've got the minimum. That's the heart of the heart. We've got to have at least 5 stories.
Questions on that? Are y'all getting your urban planning nerd on today? Are we getting into it pretty good? I love this stuff. Oh my God, I can't get it.
Question back here.
All right.
There's residential lobster. There's residential lots that are in here.
Yeah.
Is there going to be anything, any other residential developments other than like the lead that's going on with the Granville that are going in like existing buildings like Guarantee Building or Health Building?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we would love to see that. You know, if you look at our historic towers, we've got several of them that are fully occupied and doing well. T.W. Patterson, the Grand. We've got others that are empty and need help. Bank of Italy, for example, the old J.C. Penney's. And so we're working really hard with the owners of those buildings to try to get those buildings filled up and restored. We're not really biased